guys, I guess you could call this part 2 of the shock problem. This is, yeah, I know you don't have to tell me, I know that I marred it up. Okay, I'm going to go into detail why. What's happened is, this is probably the stupidest design I've ever seen. You got these really fine aluminum threads that you obviously don't want to damage, right? You get this really thick lock ring. Like if it was thinner, it probably wouldn't be so bad because it would get over past the bad threads. But what's happening since they crushed it with this lock nut, as you can see in the hole there, it's nice and shiny, so the threads are totally flat. What happens is when I turn it this way, it only goes so far and stops. And if I go this way, it'll go up again, and then it'll stop exactly where the set screw was a factory set. So them just tightening this down in the factory crushed the threads, and this is what started everything. So, and the other issue I have is without the lock ring, it gets so tight that it actually breaks the seal here, and this is where all the oil leaked out. And this is my big problem right here, which I will show you. There's the inside there. There is an O-ring in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this right out. And look at the crap in there. It's like a brand new shock. Brutal. So we're going to clean this right out and clean all the oil off the threads. And then we're going to use a really good quality Loctite on it. Put it back together and see if that doesn't keep it from coming loose. And then what I'll do is I will try and force the threads to get past the bad part. Once this is totally seized up here from the Loctite, I can put a bar through it and make this go back and forth, oil it a bit, and hopefully if I can get it past that bad spot, and then I can bring it up to about here, and that'll be that. But it's going to get a lot more marred when I'm done with it. I'll probably just take some light sandpaper and smooth it out. It'll just be silver instead of whatever this is, tinted. But, yeah, there's no way around it. As you can see it through the hole, it's exactly where the set screw is. That's where it stops. So this is a bit of a joke, because if you look online, if you look at any other models, they have two thin lock rings that you turn like that to lock it, and you turn like that to unlock it, which makes sense because you don't want to damage these fine threads. But this is the stupidest design I've ever seen. So I went online on Amazon and I found a link for some really high quality thread locker. This is like industrial strength. It actually gets into the threads. So I'll just make sure everything is dry and oil free, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, I don't know how much oil is in here, so we're just going to use a container and dump it out. See how black it is. Look at that. That's like a brand new shock. Yikes. Let's say it needed to be rebuilt anyway. Like even if I don't get it past the thread, once I re-oil it, I'll likely just leave it, because I'm not spending, like a shock like this can run you up to $300, which I'm not spending. I mean, I could pick one up for $60, but as is basically. What I'll do is I'll leave that in there for a while to soak up the oil. Clean these threads up a bit. Yeah, see, there is an O-ring in there. Keep paper towel on it. I don't want to dry it right out because it might deform. There's black stuff in there. Whoosh, it's brittle. I haven't been riding it that long. I'll leave a link in the description of the stuff I'm going to pick up to use on it. Hopefully it's fork oil and the Loctite. Let's clean it up for now. Now, there's no physical way I can hold this from moving without damaging the thread third or further. They got a boot on here, but I don't know what's underneath it. Probably nothing. So what I'll do is I'll leave this in here, and I'll just set the cap back on. There, and I'll leave it sitting like this. And all the oil that's up in there will run down into the bottom there and get caught by the paper towels. I'll post another video when I get the stuff in, but I'm going to try and rebuild before I go out and buy a new one. Well, I ended up putting it back together. It's a little bit of a learning curve because I don't have any information on this particular shock on this bike. It didn't come with that. So I did find when I was repacking it, like you saw in that video, when I poured the oil out, that blackness wasn't actually dirt. What it was the siding, the piston on one area of the shock. It's digging into the wall. It's so like the whole one side is scored. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of leakage by that. So it's already on its way out. The ring is stripped, and even when I removed the spring and everything else and tried to move it, I was rocking it back and forth. I'd get about half a turn on the other direction, and then it would just freeze. So I don't want to try and free it up, because if I do, and it does ruin the threads all the way around the ring, the pressure from the spring is just basically going to pop the threads, and then it's going to drop down, and I'm going to have to replace the shock. So all I did was basically repack it. I did find that when you fill it full of oil all the way to the brim, and then I tried to put the cap, or you saw the little aluminum cap with the seals on the end, and force this on, there has to be at least a little bit of air in there so it can move around. I found even without the spring, I couldn't push the plunger in or out. It was so tight. So I left a little bit of air in there, and now you can move it up and down. So it rides fine. Like it does. It's a little springy when it's sitting still. When the valve is in the air part, where obviously the air is going to be on the top, and when the valve's at the top, I guess it catches some of the air. So it's when no one's sitting on the bike, it is springy. But when you sit on the bike, you can hear the oil rushing through it, and it does dampen now. So I'm going to leave it the way it is. It's been repacked, sealed up. As soon as it springs a leak or the seals go on it, then it's time to replace it. But I'll never be able to adjust it. Not that I'm worried about it. It was the dampening was the problem. It wasn't the actual shock itself. If I want to adjust the shock, what I'll do is I'll take it apart, take the top off, take the spring out, and I can put a shim in here. And then when you put the spring back in, obviously it's going to compress more. But I'm not going to monkey with it. A shock like that can run you up to $300. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to something else. I'm going to end up replacing the back end with aluminum one, shorter one, and a few other mods. I want to get rid of the handlebars eventually. I want to get the type with the Grom ones where